Homage to fundamental teacher Buddha Shakyamuni, homage to wisdom warrior Manjushri, homage to all lineage benevolent masters. The Dharma, infinitely profound and subtle, is rarely encountered even in 1,000,000 eons. Now we are able to hear, study, and follow it. May we fully realize Tathagata's true meaning. In order to liberate all sentient beings from samsara, generate supreme bodhicitta. Now we shall teach the words of my perfect teacher. In the words of my perfect teacher, we are now teaching about following a spiritual teacher. In following a spiritual teacher, it teaches that first one should skillfully examine the teacher, then skillfully follow the teacher, and finally skillfully learn the teacher's intentions and conduct. Such a disciple will definitely enter the right path, as the Treasury of Precious Qualities states. First skillfully examine the teacher, then skillfully follow the teacher. Finally, skillfully learn their intentions and conduct. This person will surely enter the right path. This has already been stated here, and it's also a summary of the previous text. First, one must skillfully examine the teacher. This is not fault-finding, not looking at others' shortcomings. In the middle, one must also skillfully follow, as every Bodhisattva's Vajra words state. In our process of following, we must follow skillfully. Finally, skillfully receive the teacher's intentions. Such a person will definitely enter the right path. Therefore, in our process of following, we cannot have a weary mind. We must recognize the importance of following a teacher, then skillfully truly follow. Only then can it be considered genuine conditions for learning Buddhism and our conditions for accomplishment. The Flower Ornament Sutra also teaches approaching and making offerings to spiritual friends is the initial cause of possessing all wisdom. Therefore, do not become weary of this. We should first skillfully approach and make offerings to spiritual friends. This is the initial cause, and thus one can possess all wisdom, precisely because this is so. When we follow or receive the teacher's intentions, we should not have an averse mind, not have a suffering mind, and not generate wrong views. Even when sometimes regarding the spiritual friends, certain behaviors, intentions, and hidden meanings that we cannot accept. When we cannot accept them, we should silently repent or recognize them through a positive perspective, the excellent and vast activities of all spiritual friends in benefiting beings. After this, one's own mind stream will become peaceful and many merits will naturally be obtained. Therefore, following a spiritual friend is extremely important. Next, it teaches. Therefore, having found a supreme spiritual friend who possesses all qualities, during period of following, one should disregard one's bodily life. Just like Bodhisattva Sadaprarudita, following Bodhisattva Dharmodgata, the great scholar, Naropa, following the noble Tilopa, and Milarepa, following Marpa the translator. In the words of my perfect teacher, 3 very typical stories are given to us. One is the story of Bodhisattva Sadaprarudita, the second is Naropa's story, the third is Milarepa's story. From these 3 stories, we should understand how to practice austerities in the process of seeking Dharma, how to seek teachers, and obtain sublime Dharma in the process of seeking Dharma. Therefore, regarding these matters, all of you present must deeply contemplate if one truly has the capacity to disregard one's bodily life in seeking and following and finally obtain the teacher's intentions. Actually, some people have the conditions and patience and faith in all aspects. They don't necessarily need to follow for a long time. In a short period, they can completely receive all the teacher's intentions. Of course, if there's an opportunity to follow in person, follow in person. If there's no opportunity to follow in person, I think now, for example, through DVDs and other methods to obtain the teachings of various teachers. This way one should also obtain genuine benefits in the Dharma, just like His Holiness. Jigme Phuntsok never met Mifam Rinpoche, but from childhood he relied on Mifam Rinpoche's texts and then generated joy toward him. Although at that time there weren't the kind of scientific instruments we have now. Later, in each of His Holiness's works, he would first pay homage to Mifam Rinpoche Jigme. Lingpa never personally met Venerable Longchenpa, but he also saw Venerable Longchenpa's Dharma treasures, and then generated Buddha-like faith toward him, and after diligent recitation, attained enlightenment. So in the biographies of many great masters of the past, although they didn't personally receive teachings at their teachers' feet, they relied on their Dharma treasures to gain faith and enlightenment. I think many of you present here, including those now studying the way of the Bodhisattva and the words of my perfect teacher. Among these people are very few Dharma friends. We have never met each other at all, but I hear they've obtained some benefit from the texts or DVDs, although we dare not say we mutually enlighten each other or grant blessings. We dare not say these things, nor do we have this ability. But truly, the Dharma we transmit is indeed the Vajra words of great masters. So many people benefit from relying on the texts. There's nothing wrong with this. It's reasonable and proper. Therefore, we also very much hope that in the future, whether in person or through our so-called physical body, meeting each other and talking, I don't think this is important. What's most important is obtaining benefit from the texts and Dharma principles. Therefore, in the future process of seeking Dharma, one must maintain pure perception and also practice austerities to seek Dharma. Now, I'll first tell the story of Bodhisattva Sadaprarudita. This story, I'll just read it literally to everyone. There aren't many scriptural proofs, logical proofs, or extensive explanations. I'll just read it literally to everyone. The text is quite easy to understand. I've seen the story of Bodhisattva Sadaprarudita in the Mahaprajna Paramita Sutra, and Small Prajna Paramita also has the story of Bodhisattva Sadaprarudita, but that story is quite ancient and not particularly easy to understand. Here, I'll explain it with relatively simple and easy to understand language, so this story should be quite clear. In the Prajna Paramita Sutra, Bodhisattva Sadaprarudita is called Sadaprarudita. Perhaps the Sanskrit meaning is Bodhisattva Sadaprarudita. In the past, many translators called him Sadaprarudita or constant sorrow when translating. The Bodhisattva Dharmodgata here, in other translations, is sometimes called Dharmodgata, sometimes translated as Dharma flourishing, sometimes as Dharma supreme, and also Dharma Ketu, etc. There are different translations. There's also Dharma coming, which differs slightly from Dharma flourishing, but perhaps the Sanskrit originals differ. Anyway, we should know how Bodhisattva Sadaprarudita followed what we call here Bodhisattva Dharmodgata. Long ago, Bodhisattva Sadaprarudita searched everywhere for the Prajnaparamita teachings once he came to a particularly quiet wilderness. From childhood, he especially loved those particularly quiet places, without noise, without clamor, such quiet places. At this time, such a voice came from the sky. Good man, go east, and you will hear the Prajna Paramita. Pay no heed to bodily fatigue, drowsiness and sleep, cold and heat, day and night. Also, do not look left and right, but press forward courageously. Soon you will obtain the scriptures of the perfection of wisdom, and you will also see the teaching monk who transmits the perfection of wisdom teachings. Originally, the following describes someone like a tantric yogi, but here it says teaching monk. At that time, good man, you should, before this noble one, listen to the Prajna Paramita and regard him as Buddha, as your teacher. And in the process of seeking Dharma, you must respect the sacred Dharma and follow accordingly. Even if you see this, Bodhisattva Dharmodgata, enjoying the 5 sensual pleasures, do not generate wrong thoughts or wrong views toward him. Know that beings' faculties are diverse. To tame demonic forces and various other different beings, never lose faith in the Bodhisattva's skillful means. From the voice in the sky, such reasoning was explained. After hearing these words, Bodhisattva Sadaprarudita immediately set out eastward. Right then, when he heard that if you go east, you'll obtain the paramita and find a teacher. After hearing this, he immediately went east. He hadn't gone far when he realized, how come I didn't ask that voice exactly how far to go? How many kilometers? How far? Nothing was said at all. Now I have no idea where the place teaching Prajnaparamita is. Which way should I go? Basically, only east was mentioned. Nothing else was said. So exactly which place in the east should I go to? Thinking this over, he couldn't help but cry out sorrowfully. While weeping, he secretly made a resolution, originally regarding why Bodhisattva Sadaprarudita is called constant weeping. Some texts say there are 3 reasons. The first reason is that from childhood, he especially loved to cry in front of his parents. This is the first reason. The second reason is that later, when receiving the Prajnaparamita teachings, he generated compassion for beings and loved to cry. And finally, when he reached here, he really couldn't find the direction. At this time, he also cried for 7 days and nights. So he's called constant weeping. There's also this explanation. Some Dharma friends have said before, some teachers say, women love to cry, but actually men also love to cry. Bodhisattva Sadaprarudita was male, and he loved to cry so much. Some say this jokingly, but actually Bodhisattva Sadaprarudita at that time secretly made a resolution. He thought before hearing the Prajnaparamita teachings, I will never mind hardship and fatigue, hunger and thirst, drowsiness and sleep. Day and night I should be like a mother who has lost her only child, eliminating all other distracting thoughts. Actually, the Mahaprajnaparamita Sutra already explains this. It tells how Buddha continuously narrated this story to Subhati. When narrating this story, it also said, at that time his state of mind was like when parents lose their child. Parents won't think of anything else, always thinking of their own child. Similarly, at that time he always thought of seeking the sacred Dharma and following a spiritual friend. Other than this, he had no other distracting thoughts. He thought this way at that time. Alas, I don't know. I really don't know when I'll truly be able to hear the perfection of wisdom. Thinking of this, his heart was extraordinarily sorrowful, especially sad, and he kept crying there. He cried for about 7 days and nights, continuously crying like this. At this time, the form of a Tathagata appeared before him, first, repeatedly praising the merits of seeking Dharma. This Tathagata said that countless Tathagatas of the past, when seeking the sacred Dharma, also practiced such austerities. You too, for seeking Bodhi, your earnest heart should be worthy of praise. Good man, excellent, excellent, and so forth, praising the merits of seeking Dharma. Then he told him further, 500 yojanas from here, there is a city called Gandhavat. In the Mahaprajnaparamita Sutra, it's translated as Wonderful Fragrance City. In the small Prajnaparamita, it's called All Fragrances City. Here it's Gandhavata. The meaning is basically the same. The meaning is the same, only the words differ. Surrounded by 500 parks made of 7 precious materials. At that time there were 7-story pavilions, 7-story jeweled trees, surrounded by many different sublime features. In the Prajnaparamita Sutra, all these are described very extensively. All merits and auspiciousness are perfect, located in the central crossroads. At that time it wasn't like this, Buddha told him. When you go east there is such a city. In the central crossroads of this city is Bodhisattva Dharmodgata's 7-jeweled palace. Actually, the entire Gandhavat is a particularly large city. At the highest point of this city is Bodhisattva Dharmodgata's palace, extending 1 yojana around, with parks and all necessities complete. Great Bodhisattva Dharmodgata and other retinue, 68,000 women gathered together. It was also mentioned earlier that Bodhisattva Dharmodgata enjoys the 5 sensual pleasures. He is together with more than 68,000 women. In this city there are many swimming pools. After Bodhisattva Dharmodgata teaches them the Dharma, everyone enjoys worldly pleasures. The 5 sensual pleasures are all present. They fully enjoy and play Bodhisattva Dharmodgata at 3 times, for the assembled retinue living there teaches the perfection of wisdom, Dharma. He constantly teaches them the Mahayana, perfection of wisdom teachings. After finishing teaching the perfection of wisdom, some, to repay the Dharma kindness, make offerings with flowers and various offering materials. Some continuously contemplate the content of Dharmodgata's teachings. Some engage in recitation. Some continuously organize and expound the texts. Some, relying on these Dharma principles, immediately attain enlightenment. I see that the sutra describes how their situations were all different at that time. If you go to his seat, you will receive the perfection of wisdom. At that time, you also cannot generate doubts from the sky. Such a voice was transmitted to him. Everyone knows the entire plot of the story. In the middle, when he was really at his wit's end while continuously grieving, another Tathagata appeared. This Tathagata is a key figure. Later on, he will ask where this Tathagata came from. This Tathagata also taught him and showed him exactly how to travel the path. This is how it appeared in the middle. Some of our Dharma friends, when following a spiritual teacher, looking for the path, looking for the Buddhist academy, keep searching but can't find it. Not to mention meeting a Tathagata, sometimes they meet thieves who steal all their money. If they met a Tathagata, how wonderful that would be. He really had no way to travel. Finally, he met some other beings, not a Tathagata. After Bodhisattva Sadaprarudita heard these words, he was in a state of non-conceptualization. Immediately he clearly heard. At that time, he had already entered a certain state. He immediately heard Bodhisattva Dharmodgata there teaching the words of Prajnaparamita. He heard everything through inconceivable interdependent origination from a very distant place. He had already heard it at that time. He also manifested many meditative teachings. He manifested many samadhis that arose in his mind stream. And he witnessed countless Buddhas in the 10 directions teaching Prajnaparamita. After they taught, they also praised Bodhisattva Dharmodgata in unison. Then they all completely disappeared from his view. At that time it was such a process what he saw then. They also spoke to Bodhisattva Sadaprarudita about the merits of seeking Dharma, using skillful means to seek Prajnaparamita. Will benefit countless sentient beings in the future. These Tathagatas of the 10 directions also taught some sublime Dharma to Bodhisattva Sadaprarudita. He then entered such a pure state. Then all the Tathagatas just mentioned, all the Buddhas of the 10 directions, all immediately disappeared and were no longer visible. At this time, Bodhisattva Sadaprarudita toward Bodhisattva Dharmodgata generated infinite joy, faith, and reverence. On one hand, he obtained these meditative teachings. Of course, these people had already attained various meditative powers and concentrations. At such times they have great faith in the teacher, the Dharma, and liberation. He thought to himself, in what manner should I go to meet Bodhisattva Dharmodgata? At this time he thought, I must. Now I have direction too. If I have direction, I must go follow. If I'm going to follow, how should I go see the Bodhisattva? Perhaps in a hurry. When contemplating in that quiet place earlier, he had already come out. He brought nothing with him, no offerings either, so what should I do? I can't meet him empty-handed, so what should I do? Then he thought to himself, I am very poor. Things I can use to make offerings to the spiritual friend, Bodhisattva Dharmodgata, clothing, jewels, fine incense, pearls. I have none of these possessions. I have nothing at all, not even a penny for offerings. I should sell my own body and offer the wealth obtained from this to Bodhisattva Dharmodgata. He finally decided it would be best if I sell my own body. If he sells his body, probably parts of his body, cutting some flesh. Otherwise, if his entire body were gone, it would be a mental offering. Only consciousness would remain, which wouldn't work, but what he meant was only the flesh and skin from his body, or eyes, ears, etc. Whoever needs a piece, he would give it to them. Earn some money to make offerings. This is what he thought at the time. He also thought to himself from beginningless time, in the process of wandering in samsara, I have sold countless bodies, and also due to greed countless times my body fell into hell, suffering cutting and slashing, thus wasting countless lifetimes in vain. These were neither for seeking such Prajnaparamita sacred Dharma, nor for making offerings to such genuine spiritual friends like Bodhisattva Dharmodgata, nor such noble ones. So it's very worthwhile for me. I must sell my body and use the wealth obtained to make offerings without hesitation. Then he went to a place, because he kept heading east. On the way, he came to a particularly prosperous, beautiful, vast city where people lived in peace and contentment. In the marketplace of this great city, he began shouting loudly, "Who wants to buy a person? Who wants to buy a person?" He kept shouting like this in the great city, "Who will buy a body?" saying this. At this time, Mara became jealous of Bodhisattva Sadaprarudita's such austerities for the sacred Dharma and began to create obstacles, thinking if Bodhisattva Sadaprarudita truly obtains the Prajnaparamita teachings, this would cause great harm to the demonic forces. His realization and enlightenment would cause great harm to the demonic forces. So, regarding anyone he tried to create various obstacles, what could he ultimately accomplish? The voice of Bodhisattva Sadaprarudita continuously shouting, "Who will buy a body?" On the road, no one could hear at that time, as it says in the sutra, only the merchant's daughter who appeared later, because in past lives she had planted very profound, wholesome karmic connections with Prajnaparamita. So no matter how Mara tried to obstruct, he had no way to harm her. At that time, the merchant's daughter had already heard this voice. Other than this, all the people in the entire city couldn't hear at all, no matter how Bodhisattva Sadaprarudita shouted, "Who will buy a body?" Everyone completely ignored it. Not hearing Bodhisattva Sadaprarudita couldn't find anyone to buy his body. He became extremely sad. He wept sorrowfully on the side, tears streaming from his eyes. He also thought in his heart, "What kind of wrongdoing have I committed? I even want to sell my own body, yet I don't have the ability to obtain even the smallest amount of wealth. What kind of wrongdoing did I commit in the past?" He kept crying in another place, very sad, continuously weeping like this. At this time, Indra wanted to test Bodhisattva Sadaprarudita's resolve, so he manifested as a young Brahmin and came before him. At first he also praised him, asking what he wanted to do here and other questions. At that time he explained this process. Although I don't need a person, I need to perform a sacrifice. To make an offering, I urgently need human flesh, human fat, and human bone marrow. If you're willing to sell, I can give you an appropriate price. This is what he said at that time. Some histories also say that at that time this Brahmin needed human blood, bone marrow, and heart. He needed these three things. At that time, Bodhisattva Sadaprarudita was first extremely joyful. First he drew fresh blood from his left arm to give him. Then he cut off his right leg and extracted bone marrow from the right leg bones to give him. Finally, when he was preparing to dig out his own heart at a wall corner, the merchant's daughter appeared. There's also such a passage. This part of the plot is slightly different. After Bodhisattva Sadaprarudita heard this at that time, that he was prepared to buy his body, flesh, blood, and bone marrow, at this time he was overjoyed. Without hesitation, he pierced his right hand with a sharp blade, and fresh blood immediately gushed out. He also cut fine flesh from his right leg, then went to a wall corner to prepare to break the bones and extract bone marrow. He had already given him the fine flesh and blood. Then, at the wall corner, he prepared to break the bones and extract the bone marrow. Right at this moment, a merchant's daughter saw this scene from upstairs. She was quite shocked, very surprised. She came before him and asked him in bewilderment, "Good man, why are you torturing yourself like this?" She happened to... Actually, this story of Bodhisattva Sadaprarudita, if made into a movie, would also be very good. In general movies, it's also common that when a man is doing something, a woman appears. This is often the case. Originally, when we performed the White Lotus, at that time, the teacher, in 1998, we probably rehearsed for about a month for the Academy's Vajra dance at that time. In the White Lotus at that time, we also performed the story of Prince Great Courage, and also the story of Buddha Shakyamuni's 12 deeds of enlightenment. At that time, we hired some directors, but some directors kept preparing according to Han area customs. Preparing to use some romantic plots, which I later stopped. I said the audience is basically all our monastics. If we perform something particularly inappropriate in front of monastics, if it's not very reasonable, everyone might not find it very good. But at that time, that person said no. In many of our story plots, such elements must appear, otherwise there would be no flavor in them. She said this at that time. Anyway, I later still basically followed the stories in the Buddhist sutras without adding such things. Actually, what they said was also right. In the particularly pure Buddhist stories we see now, in the middle, perhaps due to some actors at that time or due to the director's reasons, they add some particularly inexplicable scenes in the middle now in many particularly good Buddhist story movies. There are often such things, so I think if this were to be filmed in the future, I see that now in various cities, including some Buddhists themselves. When creating some dances and stories like this, they can also do it this way. Some time ago, I saw a place where they performed a Buddhist story. If it were like this, it would be very simple. On the DVD they wrote that they were performing such and such story. I thought it might be particularly wonderful. In the end, 2 or 3 people came on stage and just sang and sang. Then it was over. For such stories, I could probably be a director too. It shouldn't be very difficult. However, when we originally performed the biography of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva and Journey to the West, the White Lotus, at that time, I heard that later, some individual Dharma friends, when they often went to the place where we performed at that time, many of them would say with particular pride, "I performed here, I was such and such at that time." Then they considered themselves to be real actors. If that's the case, we were also real directors at that time, if there's an opportunity in the future. Actually, making people truly generate joy and reverence toward great bodhisattvas, having some reverence toward Buddha, Shakyamuni would be very good. Now, in the West and Europe, there are many particularly famous movies and stories of this kind. Actually, the content in these is easily accepted by people. There are both worldly plots and some transcendent worldly ones. Through a skillful method, people finally truly understand the Dharma or the greatness of Buddha or truly generate compassion for sentient beings. If some movies are filmed very well, through such DVDs, many people's mind streams might truly generate compassion. I think if done this way, this is also a kind of bodhisattva's skillful means and should be very good. So what I was saying earlier, in the middle, he happened to be at the wall corner. When preparing to extract his own bone marrow, the merchant's daughter had already seen from upstairs. And after seeing, she had originally already heard earlier Mara hadn't obstructed her. This merchant's daughter had very good roots of virtue. Moreover, in the secret biography of Padmasambhava's Dakini, Yeshe Tsogyal, it says this merchant's daughter was her past life, and during Buddha Shakyamuni's time, she was the Ganges maiden. Then during Bodhisattva Sadaprarudita's time, she became the merchant's daughter. Later she became the Dakini Yeshe Tsogyal. There's also such an account. People like these had very deep roots of virtue regarding Prajnaparamita teachings in past lives. And the spiritual friends these people encounter are also completely different. The Dharma teachings they hear are also particularly suitable for themselves. This definitely has different karmic connections. At that time she asked, "Why are you torturing yourself?" Bodhisattva Sadaprarudita narrated to her the entire experience and process, how he sought Dharma and how he originally wanted to make offerings to Bodhisattva Dharmodgata, but he was penniless and extremely distressed. So today he had no choice but to sell his own body. He told her the entire process, and the merchant's daughter continued to ask him, "So by making such offerings to him and serving him in this way, what kind of merit will you obtain?" At that time, Bodhisattva Sadaprarudita continued to explain to her, saying, "He teaches all bodhisattvas skillful means and the perfection of wisdom. What he obtains is that Bodhisattva Dharmodgata will teach the paramitas. If one studies according to this, there are 2 kinds of merit. First, one can attain Buddhahood with complete and perfect merit and omniscience. If we study, the first benefit is obtaining Buddhahood. Second, one can also share the wish-fulfilling jewel of sublime Dharma with all sentient beings. These 2, for wise people, the goal of all of you present is also like this. What is the purpose of seeking Dharma? Some people completely don't understand. You go there to seek Dharma. What do you gain? What's the purpose? The purpose from a long-term perspective is these 2, of course, temporarily there might be physical health, happy life. There can be many temporary purposes as well, but this is not the ultimate purpose. There should be these 2 gains. One is attaining Buddhahood, the second is obtaining the wish-fulfilling jewel of sublime Dharma, like the teachings on emptiness, if truly realized, can satisfy all sentient beings and allow my merits to be shared with beings. He will obtain such benefits. Just now the merchant's daughter, this young lady, heard such profound teachings because she had this karmic connection from past lives, and when she heard the meaning of the emptiness teachings, she was particularly moved. Her hair stood on end, extremely joyful, ecstatic with joy. She said, For each portion of these merits, abandoning bodies as numerous as the sands of the Ganges would be worthwhile, much more so these present austerities of once or twice. Actually, when we study this, everyone should think, for these teachings, not to mention all of them, like the emptiness teachings, the Prajnaparamita teachings, even for one portion, bodies as numerous as the sands of the Ganges could be abandoned, much more so other external possessions. But please don't let your body suffer such pain. I can provide all the necessities for making offerings to Bodhisattva Dharmodgata. At this time, he encountered favorable conditions, meeting a great benefactor. Moreover, she also had a request. I also want to go with you to Bodhisattva Dharmodgata. I also hope to obtain these merits and increase my roots of virtue. The merchant's daughter not only could help him with all the offering materials, but she also had a request. I also want to go with you. I also want to obtain this. She met him on the road. Some of our Dharma friends, when seeking Dharma, meet someone on the road. I also want to go there with you. It's fine. You go there and ordain well, you go there and practice well, I can support you. But you must take me there. You can't abandon me, I'll go with you too. And they also come along. At this time, Indra also appeared in his own form. He said to Bodhisattva Sadaprarudita, earlier, wasn't it in the form of a young Brahmin wanting bone marrow and his flesh? Right at this moment, that person from before. Actually, this performance I could direct it too. We could film one. At that time, Indra appeared in his own form. Wow, the celestial being came out, then said to Bodhisattva Sadaprarudita, I am Indra, I came to test your resolve. Whatever you need, I can offer it with both hands. Bodhisattva Sadaprarudita said, please grant me the Buddha's supreme merit. I don't need anything else, just the Buddha's supreme merit. Indra said, this is not within my realm, I'm truly powerless. Then Bodhisattva Sadaprarudita said, if you truly cannot give Buddhahood, then give me Prajnaparamita. He said, Prajnaparamita, I can't do that. This is also beyond my power. Bodhisattva Sadaprarudita said, if you cannot give me these two, then for my body to be completely restored, you need not exert effort. I can rely on myself. Through the blessings of true words, I can recover. What are true words? He immediately said, may, through this. Actually, in the middle here, there's such a passage Indra said to him in the middle. Although the Buddha's miraculous powers are inconceivable, the Bodhisattva's sincere heart is also inconceivable. But I hope, because I initially disturbed the Bodhisattva with my power, let me restore your body. This should come later, right? There's such a passage. He began to invoke the power of true words, may through the truth of the Buddha's irreversible prophecy, and the truth of my own unwavering supreme resolve, and through these words of truth, may my body be restored as before. As soon as he finished speaking, his body was exactly the same as before. Earlier, hadn't the flesh from this body been cut and blood spilled? But now, relying on what is explained here, relying on Bodhisattva Sadaprarudita's own power of true words to restore it. There's also another account. As I mentioned earlier, Indra requested the Bodhisattva, please allow me to restore your body. After permission was given, relying on Indra's blessing power, his body was restored. There are two versions. At this time, Indra also disappeared. Having appeared earlier, he had already disappeared in the middle. Thus, Bodhisattva Sadaprarudita and the merchant's daughter went together to her parents' home, that is, to the home of that merchant's daughter's parents mentioned earlier. It seems at that time she first had Bodhisattva Sadaprarudita sit outside the door. Then the merchant's daughter first entered her palace. After entering the palace, she requested of her parents, I need various gold and silver treasures, elephants, flower garlands, and all sorts of offerings. With these offerings, I want to go east with Bodhisattva Sadaprarudita to Bodhisattva Dharmodgata to seek the Prajnaparamita teachings. At that time, her parents were very surprised, saying, what kind of person is this Bodhisattva Sadaprarudita? Why are you today so eager to take all our wealth and leave? Later, the merchant's daughter also explained to them, Bodhisattva Sadaprarudita, in order to seek sublime Dharma, practices such austerities. After obtaining such sublime Dharma, he can help countless beings. After hearing such words, her parents also had good roots. They said, Not only can we permit providing all our wealth and possessions, but we also request that the two of us go with him as well. Their family was quite good, not like some individual Dharma friends' families I often see when reading these stories, especially many Dharma friends in Han Buddhism. Actually, in the process of seeking Dharma, they're also like Bodhisattva Sadaprarudita. Many Dharma friends, especially women, cry particularly much. First, their family doesn't agree, so they cry for a long time. In the middle, they can't find a teacher, so they cry for a long time. After finding one, they can't find housing, so they cry. After finding housing, they cry from winter cold. So some of our individual Dharma friends, perhaps Dharma friends seeking Dharma in cities, don't cry so much. However, they also cry when their families don't approve of studying Buddhism and family members oppose. They cry from work unit, busyness and heavy work pressure. Economic and other pressures also force them to cry. There are various kinds of suffering. Actually, these sufferings are not like when we suffer for worldly things. I often sometimes when teaching Dharma, going outside, when particularly exhausted, if I think of worldly suffering, it's really painful. Body and mind become particularly weary and painful. But when I think, oh, this is for the Dharma, transmitting Dharma to others, or seeking Dharma myself, with such a purpose in mind, it seems the suffering in body and mind naturally disappears. The psychological effect of people is very, very great. Otherwise, perhaps, the day before yesterday, I went out to give teachings at a monastery over there. Starting at 6 in the morning and returning very late at night, there were quite a lot of people there. On the road, I felt especially drowsy and tired. Then I thought to myself, I'm not doing this for my own livelihood, nor for fame and status. It should be for the Dharma, something as wonderful as the Dharma, wanting to help sentient beings little by little. When I think of such, when such thoughts arise in my mind, I feel a different kind of strength within myself. So every Dharma friend, in the process of seeking the Dharma or propagating the Dharma, when encountering even a little suffering, having the comfort of the Dharma is very important. At that time, her parents also said to the merchant's daughter, perhaps her mother was the one making the decision. Generally, the mother said, I will also go, your father must go too, we'll go together. When she returned home and explained everything from beginning to end, she obtained many offering materials. Thus, the merchant's daughter, along with 500 maidservants, boarded the carriages together. Together with the merchant, his wife, and attendants, a grand procession of 500 carriages. Earlier you saw Sadaprarudita Bodhisattva crying alone. Now on the road, he encountered auspicious circumstances. Then such a procession headed eastward when their group arrived at the city of fragrance. Originally, Dharmodgata Bodhisattva's palace was located on the heights of the city. Dharmodgata Bodhisattva sat upon a lion throne made of 7 precious jewels, teaching the Dharma to thousands upon thousands of disciples. Upon seeing this scene, Sadaprarudita Bodhisattva attained bliss like a monk entering samadhi. Everyone immediately descended from their carriages and proceeded directly to Dharmodgata Bodhisattva's residence, which was the place for teaching. They probably descended from the carriages at a considerable distance. After descending from the carriages, the sutra says, at that time they adorned their bodies with the most magnificent garments. I once saw a lay practitioner who was preparing to meet her guru. First, she would dress herself up elaborately. All 10 fingers had to have gold rings, silver rings, everything, then all kinds of bracelets. Her entire body had to be adorned with various garments. She said, I'm going to meet my guru. I should follow our ethnic customs. She wasn't Han Chinese, but from another ethnic group. She said, according to our ethnic customs, I should dress in the most beautiful, most elaborate and finest manner to meet my guru. Then she spent half the day adorning herself. Finally, she looked like someone playing an empress, even wearing a 5-peaked crown to meet the guru. Actually, this should have scriptural basis. Here it says that when the merchant's daughter and Sadaprarudita Bodhisattva from a great distance saw Dharmodgata Bodhisattva, first they descended from the carriages, and after descending, each began to adorn themselves. After each had adorned themselves, they proceeded to visit Dharmodgata Bodhisattva, heading directly toward Dharmodgata Bodhisattva there as they passed through the city of fragrance. There was a Prajnaparamita palace made of 7 precious jewels. In the center of the city was a Prajnaparamita palace made of 7 precious jewels, adorned with red sandalwood, covered with various precious jewels and garlands. In the 4 directions were placed 4 wish-fulfilling jewel lamps, also called wish-fulfilling jewels. In 4 silver incense burners, black aloes wood incense was burning, and in the central 4-jeweled casket, what was placed there? The Prajnaparamita, written with lapis lazuli ink on gold foil. There was such a sutra case. Actually, at that time, Sadaprarudita Bodhisattva very much wanted to open it and look. The sutra case was already sealed by Dharmodgata Bodhisattva with a 7-jeweled seal and could not be opened. Many devas, thousands upon thousands of devas, were making offerings with flowers and various offering materials, and in the sky, various wonderful sounds were emanating to attend to this sutra case. At that time they saw the Prajnaparamita in the most luxurious and finest palace in the center of this city. The Prajna Sutras were enshrined. So in the future, when we ourselves have some conditions and opportunities at that time, we should also, in our Buddha halls, place the Prajna Sutras in the finest jeweled caskets. In the finest Buddha halls, we cannot carelessly throw Prajna and Buddhist scriptures around. Now, many people who have just begun learning Buddhism think they're just like newspapers and other books, casually throwing them away. This is unreasonable. If one shows such reverence and respect for the Dharma, one will also obtain such merit and benefit in one's mind stream. At that time he asked those devas why they were making such offerings. Then the devas told him, because this is the Prajnaparamita, it is the mother of all Buddhas. Relying on it, the perfect enlightenment of the Tathagatas will arise in the future. They all answered him in this way: Sadaprarudita Bodhisattva and the merchant's daughter, along with the 500 maidservants, they divided the offerings they carried into 2 portions. One portion they offered to the Prajnadharma treasure. They divided the offerings they brought into 2 parts. Then half went to make offerings in the Prajna palace. Afterwards they came before the Dharma seat, where Dharmodgata Bodhisattva was teaching the assembly. The offerings brought by Sadaprarudita Bodhisattva and the 500 attendants were first offered before Dharmodgata Bodhisattva. When making offerings, what was wondrous at that time? All these offerings transformed into flower wheels and finally into garland canopies, remaining suspended in the air, constantly dwelling above Dharmodgata Bodhisattva. At that time, all their retinue also developed immeasurable joy toward Dharmodgata Bodhisattva. At that time, Sadaprarudita Bodhisattva and the merchant's daughter, along with her maidservants, all generated supreme bodhicitta. They vowed at that time, saying, we too want to be like Dharmodgata Bodhisattva, to attain the Prajnaparamita and achieve supreme perfect Buddhahood, to benefit countless sentient beings like him by teaching the Prajna teachings to benefit beings in the 10 directions. They also generated such bodhicitta at that time. After generating bodhicitta, they began to request the Dharma. Then Sadaprarudita Bodhisattva, before Dharmodgata Bodhisattva, spoke of all his experiences, the entire process from the journey, telling him everything. As he was speaking, he thought of how earlier on the road he had encountered the Buddha who showed him the way. Then before Dharmodgata Bodhisattva, he asked, saying, the Buddhas I saw earlier. Here he mentions Buddhas. Perhaps later he also saw many Buddhas. Where do the Buddhas come from and where do they go? At this time, Dharmodgata Bodhisattva taught him the chapter of Buddhas, neither coming nor going, mainly explaining that the so-called Dharmakaya has no destination, no source of coming, and so forth. Therefore, when making offerings, one should offer to the Dharmakaya. One's mind should abide in a state of non-abiding. Then it seemed they would continue with offerings, but finally that day basically it seemed slightly different from this plot in the sutra. Then when evening came, Dharmodgata Bodhisattva returned to his own hermitage, and after entering his palace he began to enter Samadhi. The first day of Dharma teaching was completely concluded after its completion 7 years later. Continuously, Finally, he remained in samadhi for 7 years. During this period, Sadaprarudita Bodhisattva and the 500 maidservants never once closed their eyes nor sat down for a moment, only maintaining the 2 postures of standing and walking to pass the days, wholeheartedly hoping for when Dharmodgata Bodhisattva would emerge from samadhi to teach the Dharma. This is the most crucial point for us ordinary people. Perhaps Sadaprarudita Bodhisattva manifested this way before sentient beings because he was a bodhisattva. But we should know that for the sake of seeking the Dharma, one practices austerities, not to mention 7 years. 7 months of standing, or 7 days of standing, or 7 hours of standing. If you had to stand for 7 minutes, you probably couldn't endure it. So at that time, those 500 people probably ate meals. Certainly during 7 years they had to eat, but continuously, with such an earnest heart to obtain the wonderful Dharma, continuously standing, continuously waiting for 7 full years. When the 7 years were about to pass, the Devas told Sadaprarudita Bodhisattva, "Now there are still 7 days before Dharmodgata Bodhisattva emerges from samadhi to teach the Dharma." At this time, he and the 500 maidservant retinue together went to clean the area within 1 yojana of where Dharmodgata Bodhisattva would teach and began cleaning. To prevent dust from rising, first water needed to be sprinkled. At this time, Mara again made all the water completely disappear. Actually, from this any of us can see, in the process of seeking the Dharma, when many unpleasant things arise, when the Dharma is particularly profound, Mara is unhappy. He will certainly create some harm for you. For example, when someone is in retreat practicing, they develop physical illness, or when someone goes to a guru to seek the true Dharma, they encounter obstacles on the road and cannot go, so they return. Or when someone is seeking the Dharma, all kinds of adverse conditions appear. Poor health, bad mood, or Dharma friends interfering with you. These are all created by Mara. At such times, one must certainly be strong, no matter what, through another method. Make Mara feel shame. We should have a kind of strength. When you seek a profound teaching, some obstacles will certainly appear. This is an inevitable phenomenon and a natural law. Therefore, some of us present here, I think this year, having heard the condensed transcendent wisdom, everyone should understand. So when Mara appears, at that time Sadaprarudita Bodhisattva pierced his own body. He thought at that time, throughout countless time he had shed blood, but it was all useless. The blood from injuring the body for seeking the Dharma is worthwhile. He pierced the blood vessels of his own body, using fresh blood to sprinkle the ground and settle the dust. The merchant's daughter and 500 retinue, they also each pierced the blood vessels of their own bodies, sprinkling blood to settle the dust. At this time, Indra often followed them, sometimes appearing, sometimes hiding. Indra blessed all the fresh blood with heavenly red sandalwood. Finally, it's said, the entire place turned red. So here it explains that for transmitting the Dharma, one should make the environment for teaching magnificent. At that time, it seems, except for Sadaprarudita Bodhisattva, every other person removed a clean garment from their body to spread a Dharma seat for Dharmodgata Bodhisattva. 500 garments began piling up there for Dharmodgata Bodhisattva to sit on, so soft, very comfortable. Because at that time he had been standing continuously and had no time to wash. Would the clothes not be clean? Dharmodgata Bodhisattva sitting on top, just joking. Sadaprarudita Bodhisattva and his retinue set up the lion throne. After all arrangements were perfectly complete, Dharmodgata Bodhisattva took his seat and taught the Prajna Paramita. At this time, because they had heard the chapter of Buddha's neither coming nor going, having heard only one section of teaching, not hearing it completely, they waited 7 years in between. Some people say, "Will you teach me the Dharma now or not? If you don't teach now, I have to leave immediately. I've already bought my ticket. Why haven't you taught me the Dharma yet?" So he waited 7 years. The Dharma teaching wasn't completed. He only taught one chapter before all other Prajna teachings were transmitted afterwards. He could still wait in time, standing and waiting continuously for 7 years. After hearing the Prajna Paramita teachings, Sadaprarudita Bodhisattva attained 6 million samadhis. Some texts say it was 100,000 samadhi teachings he had completely attained such prajna meditative states. At the same time, he personally beheld countless Buddhas from the 10 directions and 3,000 great worlds. From then on, walking, standing, sitting, lying down, everything was within Prajna's magical display. Even when dreaming, he would often meet the Tathagatas of the 10 directions face to face. It's said that now Sadaprarudita Bodhisattva is before the Tathagata of inexhaustible wonderful sound. Other sutras also mention this Bodhisattva is before another one called the Tathagata of great cloud thunder sound. In the Prajnaparamita Sutra, this Buddha has another name under his seat. So from this story we should know, for the sake of all Buddhist teachings, one must rely on spiritual teachers. For seeking all Buddhist teachings with equal mind, respectfully serve all spiritual teachers. This seems to be taught in the Flower Ornament Sutra as well. For the sake of the Dharma, we should offer to spiritual teachers with pure mind. If one can draw close to spiritual teachers, that person immediately attains the eye of wisdom. This is taught in the Meeting of Father and Son Sutra. So for us to attain the eye of wisdom and the state of wisdom, we must make offerings to spiritual teachers or rely on spiritual teachers. This story on the surface appears to be a story from the Buddhist sutras, but actually it is true fact. At that time, Asanga Bodhisattva also, after he practiced for 6 years, when he was reading the Prajnaparamita Sutra in a home. Later, feeling his austerities were insufficient, he returned to Kukutapada mountain for retreat again. There is also such an account, so if you have time, it's best to read the small Prajnaparamita, translated by Kumarajiva. Chapter 27 already explains it. The great Prajnaparamita Sutra, translated by Xuanzang, explains it very clearly. So some people, after reading this story, immediately develop joy toward the Prajna teachings and relying on spiritual teachers. Of course, those who in past lives didn't properly form good connections with the Prajna teachings, without correct view, might instead have doubts about these stories. Even developing wrong thoughts is also possible. Each sentient being's capacity is different. Earlier you saw when Dharmodgata Bodhisattva was teaching, some had already awakened, some were reciting, each person's benefit was different. One story also brings different benefits to different people, so we hope each person should develop reliance on spiritual teachers and an especially pure mind for seeking the Dharma, good. That's all for today.
Om